Welcome back, everybody, to the TV Talk Machine podcast. You thought we were never coming back, but we're back. We said we would be back. You didn't believe us. I am Jason Snell, your co-host, and across the internet from me, your host, a guy who lives in California. It's Tim Goodman. Hi.
Yeah, I wrote free guy on my thing. See your screen there? Yeah. See, like, they didn't think we were coming back, and it's to their chagrin that we did, I think.
Yeah, you can't get rid of us now.
Yeah, there was a lot of, like, going to miss the show, and then now the show's back, and
the
onus is on them now to listen. That's tough. It's a tough one.
These guys. I thought
these guys
it was done. I had more time to listen to podcasts about, like, unsolved murders.
Wow, those are popular. We should kill somebody.
Very popular. They're very popular.
Kill somebody.
All my tech nerd podcast friends and I are trying to figure out what our murder podcast strategy is, because those are big.
The murder podcast. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, would you have predicted when you started at the Hollywood Reporter, or when you started your career as a TV critic, that your final published review would be both about murder and also be an extremely negative review? Because your last review is posted, and I will post it in the show notes, and it's Dublin Murders.
Oh, yeah. We haven't really talked about that yet.
We haven't.
I love your garage door.
Yeah, but the garage door is going. I was just going to try to slide it by, but you just, instead of going into telling me about Dublin Murders, you're like, nah.
I think it's too funny. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, it's good. So just behind the scenes, because I'm going to leave this in now.
I like it.
Behind the scenes, the garage door. I work in a garage, and sometimes my son comes home from school. During TVTM, it happens a lot.
I would just hope it would go up and down, like, periodically throughout the day.
Yeah, just get some fresh air. Sure.
Yeah, get some fresh air.
I should just get the clicker here at my desk.
Yeah.
We don't care anymore, because what's the Hollywood Reporter going to do? Fire you? Like, no, they don't care. So Dublin Murders. So you, as we did talk about, you thought you had brought the bastard machine to a nice parking spot, like perfectly parked right in front of the exit, I guess, with Back to Life.
Back to Life. I love that show.
Which is really great. And it's like a glowing review. And you made the star happy, Daisy Haggard, on Twitter. And it was so nice. And then your editors at the Hollywood Reporter said, yeah, write up that other one.
Yeah, we'll take that other one.
We want the Dublin Murders. Please give us the Dublin Murders.
I drew the line at like going into the next week and doing the like Disney documentary on Disney Plus. I was like, no, that's totally not
the Imagineering story.
I did not do that one. It could have been interesting. I just did not do it.
I've heard that it's very good, but also totally just corporate propaganda that skips over the horrible working conditions of like many of the animators and things like that at Disney. But yeah.
And I just thought it would be totally wrong to go out on a like documentary and about Disney Plus. Yeah, it's not a thing. So yes, I went out on Dublin Murders instead. 8 hours. Is it 8? It was like, it's a blur now. I think it was 8 hours.
I don't know. What a way to go, though. You were so for an Irish guy, you get to be murdered in Dublin, and that's the end of your TV career there. So yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's also hilarious. I don't work there anymore, so I don't really care. I can burn the whole place down if they want. But one of the issues that I had at THR was that the reviews editor, who shall go unnamed, said, who's also a movie critic, by the way, said, you have to watch every episode. And I'm like, no, I'm not watching every episode of anything that's terrible. And so he was kind of, and this was really late in the game. Like, I was there 9 years. I was there longer than he was. But, I mean, this was like 2 months ago. He's like, are you going to watch every episode? I'm like, no, not if it's terrible, I'm not. And I think we started to get a philosophical. He was out kind of like, oh, what? And I was like, that's not how it works. I mean, a
movie reviewer, I can sort of see that you might not want to walk out in the middle.
Yeah.
But TV, if you get 8 episodes of a sitcom and you watch 2 and you're like, no.
There's literally no way I would. And, Dan will freely admit that he'll watch pretty much all. It has to be really terrible for Dan to give up and you know, God bless him, that's his style. He feels like I'm going to endure these. I'm going to watch what they give me. And there are maybe a couple of other people who do that. I don't know. There's that many. That's
a great review, by the way. This is a show not to be watched, but to be endured.
Yeah,
it's great. It's endurance television.
Yeah. And so, like, I've never understood why you would do that, because for a couple of reasons. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's really bad and then gets decent or good later, it's still bad.
Yeah, what are you supposed to say? Like, well, okay, so I watched 8 episodes and the first 6 are terrible, but the 7th and 8th are watchable. Like, is that a good review? No, it's not. Nobody should watch that, right? Nobody should sit through.
And nobody will do that. And I've made that point to them so many times, very frustratingly. So, that it's not a movie, and people just don't watch TV that way. Because it's, I hate to use these two words because I think that they're underused, but it's peak TV, people. So I would try to pass on to them my knowledge of many years in the business, where I'd be like, it's peak TV. People are overwhelmed. They're drowning. I know that we like to do tons and tons of reviews. They don't really care about reviews, not that much. And they don't want, you know, mostly, here's the thing. I learned this ages ago at the Chronicle, which had, of course, the famous little man. As you know, if people are unfamiliar with that, they had a man who sits in a chair at a movie theater, and he's either standing on his chair clapping at the best possible one, or totally sleeping. And there's 5 variations.
Or the empty chair.
Or the empty chair, right? He walks out.
He's gone.
The empty chair is the gone. And then the standing on the chair clapping. And there's 5 variations, so there's 5 different ways, like a 5-star review, to do that. But you know, I'm on record as hating that system, because what always happened was the people only really wanted to read the review if there was you walked out, so there's a little man missing chair, or there was a little man either definitely jumping out of his chair and clapping. If you were somewhere in the middle, it was just too, like, on the fence. They didn't really care. And
that's almost everything.
That's on, and that's
is not
where
0 or 1, I guess, or 5, right?
Exactly. It falls somewhere in the middle one, where I used to make the argument where, I hate to tell this to people, but you'll have to read the review to actually, instead of looking at the little cartoon man, you'll have to read the review. I'm so sorry. It's my job. And I wrote all these words for you.
Yes.
To explain
Otherwise,
it to
the Chronicle would have me sketch a little man on a chair and hand that in.
Right. And so I made the point to my editor that, like, I will not do that. And, like, you don't have the power to make me do that. And second of all, it's dumb to do that, because that's not how television works. Like, people will not do that because they have better things to watch. They're not going to say, God, you know, I'm 6 hours into this drama and it is not good, but by golly, I'm going to get the other 2 and I get my endurance trophy. So, you know, so I laughed because the last thing I had to review was Dublin Murders, and it was flawed from the start. They took 2 separate books and mashed them together. Completely different plots, completely unrelated.
Such a weird idea, right?
And I explained in the review that I think it's like, when you start killing it, like this woman did who wrote this, when you start getting, like, you know, you start turning these Agatha Christie stories into, like, hits on PBS and BBC, which is what she did, you have a lot more power. And she used that power to say, let's combine these. And it just is a mess and doesn't work. And, so I knew that this mystery was not going to be solved until the 7th or 8th hour.
Sure.
And the irony was not lost on me. And I think I was laugh crying. And, like, I am going to have to watch this thing, just like my editor said, to the bitter end, even though I already knew it was bad at the beginning. But to be able to adequately tell someone how these 2 divergent, meaningless, pointless stories come together in some way at the end, to actually have a cogent review, I would have to watch all of them, and I did. And so, like, there lay I on the battlefield of television, taking one for the team on Dublin Murders. Yeah, not good.
But Fergal from Catastrophe is in it, so.
And it, by the way, I loved that moment. I loved it because these 2 cops from the Dublin Murder Squad, I love that. Like, we need to have, like, you know how, like, what they always said, murder police on Homicide. And they also did it on The Wire.
On The Wire,
too. Yep. And I was like, this is Dublin Murder Squad. So they roll into the scene, and it's this deep remote forests where ages ago 3 kids went in and only 1 came out. And, here we are again. It's rolling in, and there's an archaeological dig that's going on. And the guy doing the archaeological dig is super annoyed that there's been a inconvenient murder in his dig zone, and he has to stop. And that person is Fergal from Catastrophe, playing a very serious archaeologist. But it's so hilarious. As soon as you see it's Fergal, if you've watched Catastrophe, you will literally laugh out loud. I defy you to not laugh out loud if you watch Dublin Murders. I defy you. And I welcomed it. I was like, thank you, Fergal, for bringing joy to this terrible, terrible plotting show. And I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
and that's it.
And that was it. It was just, he also has, by the way, if you want to watch it just for Fergal, I will say this. And this actually is a testament to the stupidity of this show. He's always lurking in the shadows like a menace. And then like you see him in the woods, his face in the woods, and the camera pans over to him. And I'm sure it's meant to be like, oh, he's watching. But if you've seen Catastrophe, all you go is like, it's Fergal in the woods. It's not scary. And so there's a scene where it drinks a bunch of wine and does a dance to the mystical gods and takes all of his clothes off and dances literally. They edit it so you can't see. He's literally dancing in the fire. So apparently his boy parts are getting scorched while he's doing it. And the level of absurdity and the fact that it's Fergal, I nearly died. So that's the one plus of that whole show. But other than that was it. That was my last one.
That's it. So what is life like when you don't have a giant pile of TV shows to watch?
It has been amazing and weird. I will have to say that. So we're recording this on a Friday.
Yes, it's the new Thursday, Friday. Sure,
it's the new Thursday, and whenever you listen to it, it's cool. But just so you know, we're doing this on Friday. So this is the end of my first full week without any affiliation to THR. Last week, I was not writing anything, nor was I watching anything, but I was doing a lot of what they so helpfully call offboarding, which is
Did you have an exit interview?
I did. I had a very hilarious exit interview where it was basically me saying, "Does it really matter?" back to the person, and they didn't know what to do with that. Because I was not being snarky. I was like, "Does it really matter? I mean, does it? You know?" So I was offboarding or offboarded, which is a little like, I guess, being waterboarded on your way out, because I also shut down my THR account, my email account, and when they didn't tell me they were going to do it, and I had stuff that I probably needed to get out of there. But one of the things that's hilarious, because when you leave, this is all boring stuff, but when you leave, you have a flexible spending account for, with $2,600 in it, you need to like turn all your receipts in. Well, it's all tied to your work account, which I couldn't get into. So I was like, I would email them, and I would on my personal account and say, really, guys, like, I really don't want anything except what's due me, like my money. And can I have access to my account? And they're like, we can give you access in 20-minute intervals. And then of course I would be in the kitchen making coffee, and then I wouldn't see it. And then the 20-minute interview would close. And I'd have to text them back and say, hey man, I missed this email. Can you open the portal again so I can get in and like get my email and my money and stuff? So it's been kind of funny. But during that week the first week when I was doing expenses for THR, but I was not watching anything, it was really weird, Jason, because I'm so used to being on this treadmill. And it's not just the watching treadmill where you watch 30 or 40 hours or something a week. You have a life to live. I have kids. I've got things to do. I'm writing stories. And so your body becomes accustomed. And again, I'm not complaining because it's not really a real job. It's not a blue collar job. I'm not breaking rocks. It's not really a hard job, but in its own way, it's difficult. And certainly has become more so in the last, 5 or 7 years. So I would be up to all hours, lack of sleep, get up, crank something out in a deadline. And they're like, we have to have it at exactly this point. And I'd get them to them, and then they wouldn't post it. And so all this time that you spent staying up till 3 a.m. and then waking up and cranking this thing out, they would just like, yeah, I got it. And then they would sit on it, and then they put it up at 2:30. And I was like, well, I could have slept, and then I woke up, and then I could have written it, and then I could have posted it at 2:30 myself or something. So to be free of all that madness was great. The really weird part was, so we go into this current week, and now I really have nothing to do at all with THR. But I also have not watched a second of episodic television. The only television that I've watched in the last 2 weeks has been the 49ers and a little bit of the Warriors. And so it's just been sports. And so I haven't kept up with any of my shows. I haven't looked at anything. And that is really weird. It's like you're forgetting to do something. And I didn't quite know what that feeling was the first week. I was like, what? I feel like I haven't done something. It was weird. I just had this nagging, like, I feel like I've got 20 hours of something that I'm supposed to be crossing off, and I haven't done it. So now we enter this second week, the end of the second week here that we're in right now. And I'm much more aware of that feeling. And I have to say, it's pretty glorious because, people who are close friends and know me or talk to me on a regular basis, they laugh because they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. It's like 10:30. I'm bored. It's like 10:30 at night. I don't know what to do. And they're like, who is this? Did you get a new phone? And I'm like, I'm thinking about going to bed. And it was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. My girlfriend was like, what? Like, cause I go to bed at 2 or 3. I don't go to bed at 10:30. And if I make it to bed before noon or before midnight, something's wrong. Like, that's the general consensus is something. No, people know not to text me in the morning. Well, I have my do not disturb on, but people know what my schedule is. Works really late at night, sleeps really late in the day.
Yeah.
And so that's all tossed out. And I think it's funny. My friends are laughing because I literally, there's been, Jason, a couple of nights where I've looked at my clock and said, 10:30, 10:40, maybe I should just shut it down. And it's kind of great in its own way. And in some ways it has been decompressing me, and I've been kind of working out the sort of toxins that have been there the last couple of years. And I'm getting on a better sleep schedule, and it's weirdly tiring, even though I'm not doing anything except for a lot of paperwork. I'm not really doing anything. So it's a weird state to be in. Today is the first day as we record this where I felt like I had a much more like focused and productive day. And I wasn't just like walking around the house with my dog saying, hey buddy, should we nap now? I just walked you at 10:30 in the morning, and it's 12. I think we're done. Let's call it a day. Let's hit the bed. Which he's more than happy to do. So it's been this weird thing where I think my body is like, okay, let's just shut down and let's do some more decompressing. And I think that period is coming to an end now. I felt much more normal today.
So now, are you, again, we're not revealing what you're doing next, but are you going to be working primarily at home doing your new thing like you did with this?
Yeah, not much changes.
So that's going to mean that you need to build up a new kind of structure for this, because you won't have to stay up necessarily, unless you really want to, till 3 a.m, but you still are going to have to create some kind of a structure around your life. So you got to build a new one.
Yeah, and which will be interesting. I mean, I'm used to it a little bit. I think people who don't go to the office, or some people who I know who work from home a day or two a week, you and I are both work at home guys, but and yeah, I'm sure you have friends who are this way, the same way, where they'll get a day or two and they work from home and they're kind of a little bit lost because if they don't have that structure,
right,
they don't know what to do. Whereas you and I, we're kind of used to it now, and I'm,
can't survive without building some kind of structure. Yeah.
And if you don't have a structure, or like, I got this book that's so great. I got this book about 2 years ago. It's called The Daily Habits of Creative People, and through history. So it's like writers and artists, primarily writers and stuff, but it's really famous people, and it was great. And this person who wrote this book did this. He studied every papers and books about people who were. You could be artists, you could be writers, you could be statesmen, philosophers, anybody. And what he found was throughout their papers, and when people who were solitary in that way, everybody had to have a routine. And it's fascinating to read them because so many of them revolve around smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol and napping. But the two constants in pretty much everybody, going back in time to like, 100 years or more of famous people who are trying to be creative in some way, the two constants are walking, so taking a walk during the day, and taking a nap. And it's kind of fascinating. So I do that. I've been doing that for like 9 years. So that will continue. But I'm not. What I'm learning right now, Jason, is that there's a difference between sort of like working at home and being able to create your own hours, which is what I did, which means that like if I wanted to like take care of some, adulting tasks, paying bills and taking the dog to the vet, I could do that in the middle of the day, no problem, take the kids to the dentist because I have quote unquote free time. And then I would have to shift my duties into the evening. But I was always on a treadmill. You still had to watch all the TV. You had to watch many hours of shows every night. You had to write pretty much every day. And now I'm in a state where, I don't have those things, but I still have this quote unquote free time. So I'm getting used to it. And I'll build some kind of habit or ritual that I'll follow. I'm very, I like to drive in the same lane kind of in my life. So that should not be a problem once I actually start doing this work, which technically, I signed all the documents. So I'm basically starting now, even though no one will actually know about it.
Right.
It's very odd.
So have you been onboarded now?
I have been onboarded. Yes. I have been onboarded to my place. And, it's funny because people still ask like, where are you going and what are you doing? And I think I've mentioned this, that I'm contractually obligated not to say that. That's their business. But as I understand it, unless something, and I get why they do it. I was, I don't really care, but to hear the story behind it was really interesting. But, it's very likely that it will never be announced. So I'll just be like an enigma, like a mystery. Whatever happened to that
guy?
That guy. You and I will be doing podcasts and stuff, and it'll come out eventually, and it's fine. But like, I just can't say it.
Yeah, that's good. It's your new employer. Is they have the right to either say, let's put it this way. Most times when you go to a new job, nobody announces that you went there, right? Like no. I will tell you that knowing a bunch of people who went to work for Apple, there's no press release about it. Maybe they say they're going to work at Apple. Sometimes they just don't say anything, and you assume they're still at their old job. And then 6 months later, they're like, "Oh no, I've been at Apple for 6 months."
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how
so
I think
it's just
happen.
Right. It just that's how it goes. Yeah. I know people are curious, but like
people will be curious.
Their decision to talk or not talk about it.
Yeah, and I don't personally care.
Right.
So it's like I'm not like, oh, I need people to know. It's it's certainly easier if you could just tell people I went here X, but I get it, so I'm cool with it.
All right, this just in: Tim Goodman has gone to X. It's a joint venture of Apple and Fox, and it's just the letter X.
And it's Elon Musk's X missile.
Oh, it is. Truck. And it's going to be in space. It's going to go on a SpaceX.
SpaceX.
It's all the letter X's are getting together because industry consolidation is happening, and all those letter X's. It's also pronounced. It may be pronounced 10 too. I don't know. It's Apple has messed that all up, so it's very confusing now.
Wouldn't that be funny if all of a sudden it was something when it was discovered, it was totally random, like he actually works for SpaceX, or like he's an engineer with the Army Corps.
Did you not know that in his spare time he was firing off missiles? It was true. It's true.
Yeah.
So I have picked up the gauntlet, Tim.
Have you been watching?
I have been watching television.
God bless you.
I know.
What is it like out there?
Well, there's shows. They're mostly streaming.
I'm told that there's some shows.
There's shows out there.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Shows.
Did you know it? There's TV shows.
Yeah. Hey man, I've been in the dark. I'm like a spy who's coming in from the cold. I've been in the dark. Well, tell me what's.
So let me tell you what's going on out there. Let me tell you, just for fun. I've been watching a lot of stuff lately. I've been watching season 2 of Jack Ryan on Amazon.
Yes. Okay, I watched that. So, but I haven't finished it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I haven't finished it either, but I'm a little more than halfway through, and I feel like my feeling about it is very similar to my feeling about the last season, which you and I talked about, which is, it's entertaining and it makes me want to keep watching it. I wouldn't say it's the best show out there. But it is unlike other shows I watch, and I like the international kind of intrigue part of it. Seeing John Krasinski and Wendell Pierce is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And they up their game on their explosions and cost per episode, it looks like.
Yeah, the explosions and using the international setting. Like, this is set in Venezuela for the most part, and I know they shot it in Colombia, I want to say, but it's taking place in a fictionalized Venezuela, and that's really interesting too. And there's something happening out in the woods, out in the jungle somewhere. That's part of the intrigue, and there's like guys on a boat, and there's political intrigue happening in the city, and then there's different leads. Anthony Stewart Head appears at one point in London, and that's a funny kind of moment of like, oh, and Anthony Stewart Head is great at playing kind of like slimy executives, which is what he's playing. So that's all good. So I mean, again, it's more of a laundry folding show, as we've come to define it here. But, I've been entertained by it, and the money is definitely on the screen for that one.
Good.
I've been watching more of For All Mankind.
Oh, yes.
On the old Apple TV Plus. I really enjoy it. I am really entertained.
It's a wheelhouse show for you, right?
It is a perfect fit for me. Like the space stuff, like the alt history stuff. I like that it. This is going to seem a little bit strange, but like I like that it stops and is not just focused on advancing the ball in terms of the like history part of the story, and takes the time to kind of explore interesting characters. I don't know how they're going to be able to do this going forward, but like the episode that just dropped spends a little more time kind of exploring Werner von Braun, who was, with the, he was, they made him join the SS, or did he join willingly? And he worked for Nazi Germany, and he built the V2, but then he also built the Saturn V. So like, is he a hero? Is he a villain in the alternate history of For All Mankind? For political reasons, he's discredited. He was discredited anyway in real life, but not quite in the same way that it's done in the show. But then there's a character with a connection to him, and she has to go talk to him, and there's a good kind of tense conversation about his role and about her father, who turns out had his own history during World War II, and like. I thought it was really good, and I thought this is something you could totally take out in terms of just pushing the plot forward. But in its own way, I thought like this is an interesting kind of exploration of, I think not enough space, 60s and 70s like space race era stuff talks about how so much of it is driven by a whole bunch of people who are like deeply damaged by World War II or Korea, and this show does get that. And I think it's, Plus, yes, there's a moon base, and the Bob Newhart show factors in, and it's pushing all my buttons. But
okay. So I know where you are, but when you said the moon base with the Bob Newhart, that's one of my favorite episodes.
Okay, that's the next episode to drop. That drops next week. I know that it's coming, and they in the previous episode they sort of like line it up, that they're all watching 6 episodes of the Bob Newhart show over and over again, and then the next one. So I'm looking forward to that. But like it's the one that I like the most by far out of the Apple TV shows. So for what it's worth.
And that's the next episode for people who are following along at home as well. Michael Dorman from Patriot.
Yeah.
That's the next one I think is his best episode, because it's so Patriot-like. For me, I loved that part of it the most. Right,
because even right now with the episode that just dropped this week, he's kind of at sea because he's kind of stuck on a moon base, and his relationship with his wife has fallen apart. I mean, it's his fault, but has fallen apart. And it's you can, knowing from the reviews that the next episode is what it is, I was like, I see where they're going here. I see. So I'm looking forward to it a lot. But I like that. I have watched the other Apple TV, the morning show, which is fine. I see people who are like, the more episodes they watch, the more into it they are, and it hasn't hit me in the same way. Although I think it's well made. I'm still not entirely convinced. I actually like C way more than I ever expected to. I actually think it's pretty well done for what it is. It is kind of ridiculous, and yet I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. There is a plot twist in the episode dropped last week, I guess, is the one that I've seen most recently, that I saw coming in the first hour, but I thought that was cleverly done in that if you're not paying very close attention very early on, they give you enough time to forget the information you've been given. And if you forget it, then this plot twist is kind of amazing. But I didn't forget it. So I was like, oh yeah, this is what this is going to be. Okay.
That's the one that got the worst reviews, but
yeah,
is it panning out a little
I know
bit better?
that's the funny thing about it. I don't know. I think it's actually, maybe it is about expectations. Maybe it is that it got such bad reviews that I went in to watch it like, well, and plus I didn't like the trailer. I thought this seems like a ridiculous idea for a show. Whatever it was, though, I watched the first episode and I thought, this isn't bad. This is I get that they spent a lot of money on it. I get that.
Yeah,
but
there's that part is troubling, but
right,
it doesn't matter.
It looks beautiful. It is making the most of shooting in beautiful, like, British Columbia fjords and things. It's gorgeous, but you know what? The world building I think is pretty good, and how to portray a society that's largely made up of people who are blind. And exploring all of the ramifications of that. Yes, some of it is ludicrous, but some of it is really interesting. And like, what does it mean if to have a battle if people can't see? Like, it's sound based and the strategies are different, and all of that I actually think is not bad. It is on one level a very much just kind of a fantasy, like a typical fantasy show where there are people with swords and they fight and stuff like that. But there's another layer to it that I think is interesting. So I guess my review of it is better than expected. I'm still watching them, which shocks me because I thought I would watch the pilot and I'd be like, you're episode 1. I guess it's not a pilot anymore. But episode 1, I'd be like, nah, okay. And instead I was like, no, this is better than expected. So I'm more enthusiastic about C than I am about the morning show, to be honest. Even though I did watch another episode of the morning show, which tries to hang a lantern on the fact that Reese Witherspoon's character doesn't really make sense. And they're like, literally, there's dialogue that's like, your background doesn't really make sense. Like,
oh my God.
Okay.
Is it really? Oh, geez.
Yeah, well, it's very much like, how is it that you are portrayed as this up-and-coming rising talent when you are only 7 years younger than Jennifer Aniston and really should be in a position of authority by now? And the answer is, oh, you know me, I'm a screw-up and people don't like me. And they're like, all right, okay, well, great.
Oh, that's a convenient out, I guess.
Yeah, but
that's
now they're really going to like her. So we'll see. I have heard again from people who have really liked that as that has gone on. It definitely has they're trying very hard to give it a West Wing vibe, I will say. From the directors who come from that West Wing ER kind of background, there's a lot of walking and talking. That was Lauren's comment as we were watching it. She's like, "Is this Aaron Sorkin?" I said, "It's not," but she's like, "Because there is a lot of walking and talking," and it's true. There is. It's trying to be that.
Well, I would like to update you and everybody else in that my son's phone broke. I had to buy him a new one. I bought an Apple product. I am now a free Apple Plus
for a year.
Subscriber. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can Woo! If you ever go back to watching television, you can watch those shows.
Sometime here's the great thing. I can actually now look at C on my own time whenever I want to and just say,
and stop.
Does this entertain me? Not like
and stop watching it whenever you want.
Exactly, and I can stop watching it. I can say, but does this entertain me in the mood that I am in currently?
Do I have laundry to fold?
Mm-hmm. Not, is it good?
Yeah. I watched The Mandalorian.
That's what I was waiting for. I want to watch that so badly. So give me your thoughts.
So episode 1, I thought was okay. Episode 1 felt to me like kind of obligatory Star Wars. Obligatory Star Wars story. There are bits in it that are good. Werner Herzog is in it, which is just hilarious because it's Star Wars and there are stormtroopers, and also Werner Herzog is here, which is wacky. And there's some other kind of interesting cameos in it. I thought it was okay, and I was like, all right, I'm not as enthusiastic about this as I am about For All Mankind, but it's Star Wars, and it looks pretty good, and it's it's a familiar story, right? It's a bounty hunter, and he's going to take this job, and obviously it's not going to go right, and all of those things. Episode 2, so episode 3 as we talk right now has been dropped. I haven't watched it yet. Episode 2 was last week, and I thought episode 2 was spectacularly good. And I'm starting to think that all of these episodes, and there are 8, I think, are all kind of iterations on stories you've told before, but then they try to do some Star Wars twists in them, and that's actually my response to episode 1 being, I kind of seen this before. Episode 2, I kind of seen it before, but not quite like this, in a way that was delightful. Also, and I don't know how consistent they're going to be with this, episode 2 is 35 minutes long. It's not, it's much shorter than episode 1, and I thought, I like that too, that it's as long as they wanted it to be to tell this very particular chapter of the story. It feels self-contained. I love that it's built to play out weekly. It feels very much like it's built to play out weekly, not to be designed for a binge drop, which, it isn't in a binge drop, so that's good. But I like that. I like that every episode feels like its own thing. And, so now I'm coming around. We'll see how I think number 3 does, but I'm coming around on Mandalorian, where I'm starting to think that that it might be pretty good. Which is funny because all the talk we had about Apple not launching, not having a catalog and not launching with a bunch of originals, like Disney Plus, unless you really want to watch old Don Knotts movies or Marvel movies you've probably already seen or bought, The Mandalorian's kind of it. There are some Pixar shorts, and there's that High School Musical thing that's a fairly low budget affair. But in terms of a number 1 top rank original streaming series, Disney Plus launched with 1. This is it. There's no Marvel show. The Marvel shows aren't until next year. This is it. So, I hadn't really thought of it that way. That it's great that they've got the catalog there, and there's a lot in the catalog, but they are really leaning on it, because if you don't want the Imagineering story or High School Musical,
and I didn't want it,
then you get The Mandalorian, and so it better be good. And I think it is good, but it's funny that if what you crave is original new material, Disney Plus does not have much of a story right now.
Interesting. Yeah, that's. We talk. I still think that I still would go. I would rather go. And I have seen really positive reviews of Mandalorian episode 2 in particular.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would rather go, give me one really good show. Because let's just say, I haven't watched all the Apple ones, but, the consensus has been, it's kind of a mixed bag, and we'll see how it goes. Nothing really, jumped out where people were like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. That they didn't have one of those. So I'd rather have, one really good show and 5-star back catalog, which because I still I want value for my money, and I think I can get enough shows elsewhere where I don't feel like I need to add to my Peak TV,
and that's what they've got
stuff.
And I have to say, the catalog stuff, they haven't made as big a deal of it, I think, as maybe they could, in the sense that there's a whole bunch of stuff there, including the Star Wars movies and the Marvel stuff, that is all 4K HDR. So if you've got a fancy 4K TV and haven't bought or aren't subscribing to the 4K Netflix plan, or haven't bought a 4K DVD player or whatever like that, but you've got the fancy TV, with Disney Plus alone, you're going to be able to see those movies at as good a quality as you can get them, basically. And I think that's very impressive. You have to want to watch the catalog stuff. But I was watching Captain Marvel the other day, and I just was like, oh, I'll watch a little bit of Captain Marvel in 4K HDR. And it was beautiful. And I haven't revisited that movie since I watched it in the theater. And I really enjoyed it. But it was in Disney Plus. I was like, all right, well, let's just throw it on. So There's something to be said for that, as opposed to Apple, where if you're not into the whatever 4 or 5, the handful of originals, that's it. That's all there is there.
Let me ask you a tech question, because you are that
Okay.
guy.
Yep.
How long have you had your 4K TV?
I got the 4K TV, I think this spring, maybe last fall. It's been like 6 months. I want to say something like that, 6 to 8 months, maybe early this year.
What's the shorthand for guys like me and women out there listening? People in general,
humans, Mandalorians, yes,
yeah, Mandalorians and humans. What is your say? Like, okay, if we don't need a brand new TV, but if you find yourself with like a reason to maybe think about upgrading or adding to a different room, is 4K the way to go, or is there just not enough options right now?
I mean, I think you should only really even care about 4K if you're buying a big TV, because on smaller TVs you're never going to even see the dots. HDR is a little bit different. Like HDR means, it's high dynamic range. It basically means the brights are bright and the darks are dark, and that's what the dynamic range is. So you end up with a picture that is more like you'd see in a movie theater. It's able to be really bright for explosions, but also really dark in the shadows, and that a regular TV doesn't do as good a job of that. I would argue that the HDR is more important than the 4K. I bought a big TV. I bought like a 65-inch TV.
Wow.
And it's so,
I did not know that.
Okay. It is beautiful. I had to take out like lots of furniture in my house in order to but it is great. So if you're going to buy a huge TV, 4K HDR, there are the OLED ones that cost thousands of dollars. That technology is coming down in price, but it's still very, very expensive. There are good TVs that are not OLED, that they're not going to be as beautiful as the OLEDs, but those cost a lot of money. So I don't know. I'd say it's inessential. It's nice if you're going to buy a brand new TV, especially it's on the larger side. You should probably get 4K HDR just because you're going to have this TV for a while, presumably. And that's why I got it, is that I wanted the fancy stuff, but I wanted the big TV. And if I'm going to have the big TV, I want to have it with the support for the 4K HDR stuff, because it just looks nicer to me. But the regular person may not notice. And if it's on a smaller TV, smaller than about 60 inches or 55 inches, unless you're sitting right up next to it, you're not going to notice.
Okay, that rules me out.
Yeah, not necessary.
Yeah,
if you get a new TV and it's offered in HDR, I mean, the 4K may be immaterial. Like, if it's a 4K HDR TV, it may still be worth getting it, because the HDR part is the part that I think, with the richer colors and the brighter brights and the darker darks, that's actually, I think more people will notice HDR than will notice 4K.
Okay. Well, I at some point I will get a bigger TV, but that's not my thing right now.
Not right now. I have more to talk about, but I'm going to just cut it off there, because I feel like we've been going for a while now, and we got to come back next week, because we're making a promise right now. We're coming back next week.
Okay. Yes.
Because we're going to record it right now.
Yes.
That's how that's going to work, because it's Thanksgiving next week, and we're going to be busy in our, I don't know about you. My daughter is coming back very briefly from college, and
Mine too, yeah.
Got to focus. Got to focus.
Laser focus
on all of that. But we'll give everybody out there who doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving and also does celebrate Thanksgiving, a Thanksgiving episode. So we'll cut it off right here for this week. We will be back next week. We know this to be true because we're about to record that episode, so we give you this guarantee. And but for now, just proof of life. We're here. Tim's not watching TV.
Nope, not at all.
But we're still talking. So there, the machine continues to run. We don't know where it's going, but it continues to run. Runaway machine.
Runaway machine. Let's change it to that.
But until next time, I think there's one thing left to say.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.